On February 25, 2022, Russian forces attacked Ukraine from all sides. Russian President Vladimir Putin warned the world that if anyone tried to interfere, the consequences would be severe. Russian helicopters and fighter jets were seen flying low over many Ukrainian cities and firing rockets. One of Putin's main targets was the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv. In this sudden and unexpected attack, hundreds of people lost their lives, and millions of Ukrainians were forced to leave their homes. To save themselves, many people hid in basements, while others believed metro stations were the safest places. Soon, every corner of Ukraine was filled with the sound of explosions and emergency sirens. Europe was witnessing a war of this scale for the first time since World War II. For the last 70 years, Europe's map had been shaped by political agreements. Now, Vladimir Putin wanted to redraw it according to his own plans, using military power. But why? Even though Russia is 27 times larger than Ukraine, why is Russia afraid of a smaller country like Ukraine? Why is the Russian president so interested in Ukraine? And what would Russia lose if he did not take action? Welcome once again to Nexus of Knowledge video. To understand this issue clearly and in simple terms, it is important to look at some events from the past. About 100 years ago, Ukraine was part of Russia. For many centuries, this entire region was ruled by the Romanov dynasty. In the early 1900s, people became tired of the Russian king and the royal system. Finally, when their patience ran out, the Russian Revolution of 1917 overthrew the Romanov dynasty and ended the Russian Empire. People were deeply frustrated with the rule of these kings. Now it was time to form a new government. During the process of building this new government, the Russian revolutionaries started fighting among themselves. As a result, the entire country was dragged into a civil war. When the civil war finally ended, 13 different republics, including Russia and Ukraine, came together in 1922 to form the Soviet Union. This union was officially called the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, or the USSR. Ukraine had gained independence from the Russian Empire just 5 years earlier. But now, it once again became part of a larger empire, the USSR. For Ukraine, it was like being freed from one cage, only to be locked into another. As time passed, the Soviet Union grew stronger day by day. After World War II, its control over this region became even tighter. Europe was now divided into two parts. One part was under the influence of the Soviet Union, while the other part was influenced by Western powers. These Western powers included the Canada, United Kingdom, and the United States. Although World War II had ended, political tension between the United States and the Soviet Union continued. The main reason for this rivalry was a major ideological difference between the two sides. The Soviet Union followed a communist system. Under this system, businesses and industries were owned by the state, not by individuals. Resources were shared, and people were given according to their needs. On the other hand, countries allied with the United States followed capitalism. In this system, private individuals and companies could own businesses and earn as much profit as they wanted. The real problem was that both sides wanted their system to spread across the world. America wanted capitalism to dominate globally, while the Soviet Union wanted communism to spread everywhere. Because of this clash of ideologies, a Cold War began between the two superpowers. This war did not involve direct fighting or weapons. Instead, both sides secretly attacked each other through politics, influence, and power. The situation became so intense that both sides were forced to strengthen their military alliances even further. In 1949, the countries that supported the United States formed an alliance called the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO. The main rule of NATO was simple. If any NATO country was attacked, all other member countries would come together to defend it. For the Soviet Union, the formation of NATO was very dangerous. If NATO countries could protect each other, they could also attack the Soviet Union together. When the Soviet Union realized the power of NATO, it created a similar alliance with its own allies. This alliance was called the Warsaw Pact. Even though both sides had created groups to protect themselves, the Cold War did not end. The conflict continued secretly because their ideologies were completely different. For 42 years, this Cold War went on. During this time, both sides tried to weaken each other without direct fighting. In the end, one side became weaker. In 1991, republics like Ukraine decided to break away from the Soviet Union. Many member republics wanted to become independent countries. The Soviet Union, which was made up of 15 republics, finally broke apart into 15 separate nations. With this breakup, the Warsaw Pact also became inactive. Ukraine once again became an independent country. After gaining independence, these new countries were free to make their own decisions. The first major step they took was removing the communist governments imposed on them. Russia, which was once powerful because of the Soviet Union, now appeared weak in the eyes of the world. Even after the Cold War ended, the alliance of Western powers did not weaken. Instead, it became even stronger. In 1999, Poland, the Czech Republic, and Hungary, countries that had earlier been under Soviet influence, joined NATO. After this, more and more countries began joining NATO. In 2004, 7 additional countries became NATO members. These were the same republics that once supported Russia, but were now part of NATO. This was the first time NATO's borders directly touched Russia's borders. At that point, only 3 countries had not joined NATO: Belarus, Ukraine, and Georgia. Among these, Ukraine and Georgia had long wanted to become NATO members. However, Russia could not accept this. Russia feared that if Ukraine and Georgia joined NATO, its access to the Black Sea could be blocked at any time. It is important to understand that after the United States and Saudi Arabia, Russia is the 3rd largest producer of oil and gas. A large part of these exports are sent to the international market through the Black Sea. This is why Russia strongly opposed Ukraine and Georgia joining NATO. Despite this opposition, Ukraine's desire to join NATO did not stop. In 2013, Ukraine also showed interest in joining the European Union. At that time, Ukraine's president was Petro Poroshenko, who was considered close to Russia and widely seen as corrupt. When it was time to sign an agreement with the European Union, the Ukrainian president accepted a large financial package from Russia and refused to sign the EU deal. He claimed that Ukraine would support Russia in all matters instead. It would not be wrong to say that Russia bribed the Ukrainian president to stop Ukraine from joining the European Union. When this news appeared in the media, thousands of protesters came out onto the streets across Ukraine. They demanded that Ukraine become part of the European Union. As the protests grew stronger day by day, the Ukrainian president responded with force. Security forces cracked down on the protesters, and more than 100 people were killed. This violence made the protesters even more aggressive. The situation became so serious that the Ukrainian president was forced to leave office and flee to Russia. For the protesters, the president's escape was a major victory. But for Vladimir Putin, it was a personal defeat. After this, Putin decided to use force. First, the Russian army took control of the Ukrainian peninsula in the Black Sea region. After that, with the help of separatist groups, Russia captured 2 regions of eastern Ukraine near the Russian border, Donetsk and Luhansk. Russia strongly supported these separatist groups, who wanted these regions to break away from Ukraine. For the next 8 years, heavy fighting continued in Donetsk and Luhansk. More than 14,000 people lost their lives, and around 2 million Ukrainians were forced to leave their homes. The separation of Donetsk and Luhansk was completely in Putin's favor. This is why he supported these regions so strongly. Putin's true intentions became clear in November 2021. Satellite images showed large numbers of Russian troops moving toward Ukraine's borders. A few weeks later, Putin announced his demands. His main demand was that NATO should stop expanding in this region. He also demanded that NATO move its military forces back to where they were in 1997, far away from Russia's borders. Putin's demands were immediately rejected by Western leaders. Instead of stepping back, they increased their military presence even further. Meanwhile, Russian troops continued surrounding Ukraine from all sides and carried out large-scale military exercises near the border. On February 21, 2022, Vladimir Putin appeared on television and officially recognized Donetsk and Luhansk as independent republics. Soon after, Russian troops entered these regions, calling themselves peacekeeping forces. At the same time, Ukraine's president, Volodymyr Zelensky, released a video message to the Russian people. He said that war would only bring destruction to ordinary citizens of both countries. Western leaders stated that Ukraine is an independent nation and that no one has the right to stop it from joining NATO. Just 2 days later, on February 24, 2022, Putin launched a full-scale attack on Ukraine, calling it a special military operation. The President of the European Commission, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, and U.S. President Joe Biden strongly condemned Russia's actions. They said that Putin and Russia would have to face serious consequences. Across the world, anti-war protesters were seen supporting Ukraine. Even inside Russia, thousands of people came out on the streets in support of Ukraine. For the first time in history, NATO activated its response force. The United States also sent its troops to Eastern Europe. Although most of the world supports Ukraine, no country is directly fighting Russia. This is because Russia has the largest nuclear weapons stockpile in the world. Putin has already warned that if anyone interferes, the consequences will be very serious. Instead of direct military action, the United States and other countries have imposed strong economic sanctions on Russia. These sanctions are expected to badly damage Russia's economy and possibly limit Putin's actions. We hope this video helped you understand the Russia-Ukraine conflict more clearly. Do share your thoughts in the comments on this special video by Nexus of Knowledge. We will see you again in the next exciting video.